If you've ever had the pleasure of meeting someone who won't shut up about their keto diet, you might think you've experienced the depths of human suffering. However, folks from the Middle Ages had it way worse if they found themselves on the wrong side of the law. Here are a few of the worst medieval torture methods. Part 1. Probably. Maybe. Now, being locked up in a medieval dungeon was already about as fun as you'd expect. You know, if your idea of a good time includes broken limbs, from getting stretched like a piece of medieval taffy or getting nibbled on by rats, but hey, why stop there? If your captors were feeling especially creative, they might throw you into something even worse. A lovely little death hole known as the oubliette. Emphasis on the little. Oubliette comes from the French word for forgotten, and boy, were you ever. This thing was like the worst Airbnb you can imagine, except instead of bad Wi-Fi, you had no Wi-Fi and a 100% chance of dying alone. Oubliettes were basically tiny underground rooms so cramped you couldn't even sit down. If you were unlucky enough to get tossed into one of these bad boys, you could forget about sitting, kneeling, or doing literally anything but standing or lying down in the fetal position, wondering why you didn't just stick to stealing bread or something. Most of the time, the only view you had was the trapdoor you came in through, way up there, mocking you. And you might be thinking, well, at least it's a private cell, right? Oh, sweet summer child. Oubliettes were rarely cleaned out, so you'd usually be hanging out with the decaying corpse of the last unlucky guy, like some kind of morbid slumber party. Sometimes you'd be so hungry that you'd be forced to chow down on said corpse, because, medieval times. One particularly cheery oubliette could be found in Leap Castle, Ireland. This place was already a hotspot for murder and general unpleasantness, but their oubliette took things to a whole new level. It had wooden spikes at the bottom. Spikes that were just short enough to not kill you right away. So, prisoners were dropped about 8 feet down, impaled, and then left there to enjoy a nice, slow death while admiring the interior design choices of their new home. I'm sure it had a very rustic, cave chic vibe. Fast forward to the 1920s, and some poor guy doing renovations stumbles upon this oubliette only to find it full of skeletons. Imagine showing up to work expecting to fix some plumbing and you end up uncovering a mass grave instead. Good times. And just to twist the knife a little more, some oubliettes were built at ground level, so prisoners could hear the sounds of life outside. Birds singing, people chatting, reminding them of the world they'd never see again. Now that is what I call a 5-star experience. And as if the oubliette wasn't bad enough, let's move on to an equally cozy medieval experience, immurement, or as I like to call it, the live entombment special. It was basically the medieval version of out of sight, out of mind. Except instead of ignoring someone's texts, you'd stick them in a wall and wait for them to die. Basically, you'd get tossed into a tiny enclosed space with no way out, left to slowly waste away from starvation or dehydration. It's like the oubliette, but with a fun twist. Instead of just getting thrown into a hole, you got the added joy of being chained to a wall, watching some guy break you in one stone at a time. Real cozy. Most of the time, the space was so small that you'd be stuck crouching awkwardly, basically turning your body into a human pretzel until your muscles gave up and you became a statue of despair. Now, you'd think something this horrific would be a one-time deal, but nope, this was actually a go-to punishment in the Roman Empire, because why wouldn't it be? You'd also find this charming little practice in places like ancient Persia and India. One of the most famous cases of immurement was that of Anarkali, a courtesan in the Mughal Empire. She allegedly got a little too close to the emperor's son, so she was literally walled up in a tower. Unsurprisingly, the Romans were big fans of this. It was their go-to punishment for Vestal virgins who broke their vows of chastity. And if that wasn't bad enough, sometimes guards would break the wall down just to feed you, then seal you back up again. Because, hey, why let you die quickly when they could stretch out the suffering? Created by the ancient Greeks, the brazen bull, or the bull of Phalaris, is one of the most documented torture methods of the ancient times and easily takes the spot of one of the worst torture devices ever created. Invented by a man named Paraelius as a new form of execution in Akagas, Sicily, the brazen bull was a life-size hollow bull made entirely of bronze with an opening on the side. This is how the victims got in. As soon as the victim was placed inside the bull, a fire was lit underneath, essentially roasting whoever was unfortunate enough to be inside. But that's not all, you see. While roasting a man alive is evil, it doesn't really make for a good show for the crowd witnessing the execution. So, the inventor added an internal acoustic apparatus that converted the screams of whoever was inside into what sounded like the bellows of a bull, and the smoke from the burning flesh was made to escape through the bull's nose. This created an illusion that the bull came to life as the victim slowly watched their life ebb away, and once the bull was reopened, the victim's scorched bones shone like jewels and were made into bracelets that people could buy. Now, being burned alive is regarded as the worst way to die, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that the brazen bull made it to the list. Oh, and the man who invented the brazen bull and the king who used it to torture his subjects were both executed via the brazen bull, so happy ending, I guess? So the next time you're stuck in a long line at the DMV or listening to your friend's 10th retelling of their keto success story, just remember, it's always better than being roasted alive in a bronze bull while everyone around you applauds your contribution to medieval entertainment. And hey, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and maybe even ring that bell so you won't miss the next time I ruin your day with some not-so-fun facts.